This is America in Space, a weekly news and information program on current events dealing with the space industry.
Welcome, and thanks for joining me today. I'm Dawn Meyer, Space Coast News Editor. How long does it take to get to the moon? Well, one answer could be that the most recent time for a spacecraft capable of carrying humans was that it took over 50 years from the final Apollo landing of Apollo 17 in December of 1972 until the Artemis 1 craft orbited the moon in November of 2022. Yes, 50 years. But a more reasonable definition is how long it takes to fly a spacecraft from the Earth to the moon. There are many factors that go into this calculation, including the positions of the Earth and the moon, whether you want to land on the surface, orbit, or just fly by, and what craft you would like to use to get there. The average distance between the Earth and the moon is about 238,855 miles, which is 384,400 kilometers. The moon orbits the Earth in an elliptical orbit, and its distance from the Earth is not constant. At its closest point to Earth, known as perigee, the moon is about 226,000 miles away, and at its farthest point, known as apogee, it's about 251,000 miles away. So when you're calculating your route to the moon, you must calculate where the moon will be when the spacecraft arrives, not where it is when it leaves Earth. You also must take into account that your craft must arrive slowly enough to perform orbital insertion maneuvers required for entering orbit of the moon or landing there. Every mission to the moon has taken a different amount of time to get there depending upon its mission. The average travel time to the moon using current rocket is approximately 3 days. The fastest flight to the moon to do a flyby was achieved by NASA's New Horizons probe. It passed the moon in just 8 hours and 35 minutes on its way to Pluto in 2006. The fastest crewed flight to the moon was Apollo 8 in 1968. The spacecraft entered lunar orbit after just 69 hours and 8 minutes, which was 2 days, 21 hours and 8 minutes after launch. And the Apollo 11 mission took 4 days, 6 hours and 45 minutes to reach the moon in July of 1969. The most recent uncrewed test flight of NASA's Orion spacecraft and launch system rocket, known as Artemis 1, reached the moon in 6 days and entered orbit. Here's the Artemis 1 mission summary from Space.com.
Our return to the moon will be different than the last time. We plan to explore more of the lunar surface and
the
learn
Space
how
Launch
to
System
live.
is now counting down to liftoff of Orion on its maiden voyage to the moon. And here we go. Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiate. 7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
We are all part of something incredibly special, the first launch of Artemis.
This view of Earth from a human-rated spacecraft not seen since 1972 during the final Apollo missions.
Distant retrograde orbit. We're going to be about 38,000 miles away from the lunar surface. We're going beyond anywhere we ever went for Apollo.
The Orion spacecraft is barreling its way back home after circumnavigating the moon and beyond in an elliptical distant retrograde orbit. Splashdown. Orion back on Earth.
So how long does it take to get to the moon? I'm sticking with an average of 3 days. Thank you for joining me. Remember each Tuesday to join David Denault for America's Return to Space. And join me every Friday for America in Space. From the Florida Space Coast, I'm Dawn Meyer, Space Coast News Editor for About Space Today.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to share our program with your family and friends and follow us on Facebook. Join us each week for news and information on America in Space.